I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
America is watching. By now, millions of people have watched footage of George Floyd dying under the knee of a police officer. Just 3 weeks earlier, they watched Ahmaud Arbery being hunted down by 2 white men. Watching black people die is just a few clicks away, and the data shows nothing else seems to inspire action like visual evidence. The New York Times reported the details of Arbery's death on April 26th, but it wasn't until after May 5th, when video of him fighting for his life was leaked by an attorney, that people really started paying attention. Back in 2014, people seemed less moved by reading about Tamir Rice's death than by watching it days later. LAQUAN McDonald was murdered by police in that same year, but public interest didn't take off until a year later, when body cam footage was released that proved that police had lied when they said he'd lunged at them with a knife. When George Floyd's death immediately went viral, it reinvigorated a movement. And now, the state is investigating the Minneapolis Police Department for, quote, systemic discriminatory practices over the last decade. Something black activists nationwide have been asking for. So when Americans watch, things can change. But the history of these images is a little complicated. During the Civil War, pictures of a slave who had deep scars on his back from whippings helped to motivate some white people toward the abolitionist cause. On the other hand, other white people reacted differently. They liked this stuff. They put photos of lynchings on postcards and traded them as novelties, even after the US Post Office banned them in 1908. But the message changes along with the sender. By 1916, the NAACP started circulating images of lynchings to build support for their movement. Then came 1955, when Emmett Till was beaten and murdered by a mob of white men because a white woman said that he'd flirted with her. He was 14 years old. His face had been mutilated beyond recognition, but at the funeral, his mother opened the casket, allowing the media to see him and forcing America to see what they'd done.
When Emmett Till's mother had the courage to open that casket, it shocked the world. And so unfortunately, there are some people who still don't believe how people are treated just based on their gender or sexual orientation or the color of their skin. So thank goodness that there are cameras that are showing police brutality and showing injustice.
Emmett Till's photo was captured by journalists who went on to document the civil rights movement. Things have democratized since then, and increasingly, it's everyday people who are capturing that visual evidence. Like in 1991, when the beating of Rodney King was filmed by a guy with a camcorder. Then cell phones came along and gave most of us a camera in our pocket, and we watched police choke Eric Garner. Americans seem to appreciate visual evidence of racism, but this comes at a traumatic cost, especially to black people who don't need to be convinced, yet again, that racism does exist.
I think what's damaging is looking at it over and over and over again, and it causes more stress and anxiety, makes you feel more vulnerable. The way our brains work, our brains are meant to help us and protect us by driving us to reward and keeping us safe. But when there's uncertainty and you look at things that are negative, it makes you wonder, could that happen to me?
Video of a police officer killing a black American is almost certain to get millions of views, but it won't necessarily get an indictment, and only rarely will it get a conviction. And even aside from that legal process, black people have to watch, again, as the national conversation inevitably shifts away from racism and police brutality and toward arguing about the quote-unquote right way to protest, forgetting the reason that people are in the streets in the first place.
What's his name? George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd!
This year has given us yet more video evidence of how openly a country built on slavery continues to lynch black people. But all these videos leave black people with a question. America's watching, but is it listening?